Hello from ABA Tech Show 2018 in Chicago, Illinois. I'm Lawrence Galetti.
Chucky Obio.
And I'm Dennis Kennedy.
And we're on the road with Legal Talk Network. And we're back. So excited. I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, and so it's LinkedIn. You know, I use LinkedIn as currency for booking interviews. I literally use it every day of my life working at Legal Talk Network. Twitter's another one I use. I kind of use them in tandem together to do my job. And it is such an amazing, amazing connection tool, but it's very underutilized. And I suspect, based on my conversation with Dennis Kennedy from the Kennedy Mile Report, that I am not doing a good job building my connections or posting articles. So we have a couple of experts here, and I want to turn the microphone over to Chucky Obio, and I want to get your bio. Where do you work? What do you do?
Perfect. So it's a pleasure to be on the Legal Talk Network. I work as a consultant working with legal professionals to really leverage their social networks for better business development. And I've got experience working at LinkedIn. I actually helped to establish a legal practice at LinkedIn where we really sought after large law firms to ensure that they used LinkedIn to drive not just their client identification strategy, but also their client acquisition strategy. So real excited to be on. And prior to LinkedIn, of course, I'm a former lawyer. And I love marrying up my legal skills with my sales skills. And it's, again, pleasure to be here.
So this is Dennis Kennedy. He's one of our hosts. That's a full disclaimer. And you're not often on this side of the microphone, sir.
No, I'm not. It's kind of fun to be interviewed. So I'm the co-host of the Kennedy Mile Report on the Legal Talk Network. I do a number of different things, but probably most relevant for this show is I co-authored a book on LinkedIn in 1 hour for lawyers, and I have a whole bunch of I've done a whole bunch of science experiments on LinkedIn that I've turned into strategies.
So LinkedIn fans, we could not be in better hands today. All right, guys, I want to hit my first question here. So, I'm always trying to grow my connections on LinkedIn. Like I said, these make it easier for me to book shows, makes it easier for me to establish phone calls, get things started scheduled. People see who I know. And truly, it's like someone's vouching for you. When I get a connection request, even if I haven't met the person, like in person, people to people, if they know some of my circle, I'm very likely to accept it, especially if they work for a company that I know. So let's start with that. I want to build my following or my connections, and I know Dennis, you had a banner year. You went from you're what, around a little over 7,000 right now. But
I'm right around 7,000, and
where were we up from?
About 2,000.
About 2,000, and how long did that take you to get there?
Not quite a year. But I've been on LinkedIn since the beginning, since 2003.
So this is recent then?
Yeah, and this was a science experiment in a lot of ways, but I learned a lot. So when I talk to lawyers about LinkedIn, Clayton Christensen has this theory called job to be done theory. And so it really comes down to, what are you hiring a technology or a service to do for you? And so I think you want to step back and say, what am I hiring LinkedIn to do? So you're going to make some basic decisions. Do I want quality of contacts or connections? Do I want quantity? What are the ranges? And then
both. I want all of it.
Once you have that, then you can start to use more tactical approaches. But I think getting a good handle on what do I want to get from LinkedIn, I'd say, what are you hiring LinkedIn to do, is a great way to get started.
Well, let's start with that. So Chucky, the tactical approaches to getting more followers, what are some of the methods you recommend?
Absolutely. One of the first things that all practitioners can do is take their law firm website bio and place that on LinkedIn. It gives your expertise points, and one of the recommendations that we have from a LinkedIn perspective is to actually place that from a third-person commentary to a first-person commentary. It personalizes your value proposition, and then it also drives the message for why they should hire you, or why you should, in some ways, join their professional networks or have them join your professional network.
When I can vouch for that. This is a totally different application, but when we're looking for experts, I've actually brought people onto the show based on a LinkedIn connection. I saw, I remember seeing somebody like that recently, connected with them, and I just go right through and I get a nice little summary of their bio, and then from there I'm like, yeah, this is definitely going to be a subject matter expert. And so, I guess my next question, kind of related to that, in terms of the strategy, I spend, like, sometimes at night, I'll like be in my bed with my phone, and I'll just kind of go to my network, and then I'll see people that are like related to some of my connections, and so I'll put out a request. And I don't know if that's like phishing or what it is, like LinkedIn phishing, but that works for me. So just in terms of like specific activities that people can take away, plug into their LinkedIn account, start building those connections, what do you guys recommend?
So there's two. So your approach is an interesting one. I think it's sort of like one of the, in terms of powerfulness, if I can use that word, it's like a little bit down the list. So what I experimented, so two things I like doing now, and it's similar to what you do, is I decided that after 13 or so years, LinkedIn must be doing a good job of algorithms. And so who they suggest that you link to might start to be pretty good. And so I started to look at that, look at the people, say, are these people I know, or that I would like to know? And since LinkedIn is suggesting them, I drop them a connection. And the return on that is actually really good. The other thing that I've done is that when somebody follows me on Twitter and they seem relevant to me or somebody I want to know, I immediately send them a LinkedIn connection. And the conversion rate on that is also extremely high. So what you're doing is good, but it's kind of labor intensive to me as opposed to some other things.
It's better than counting sheep, Dennis.
It certainly is, yeah.
Well, how about you, Chucky?
Absolutely. So you mentioned connection requests, and I think it's important for everyone to note that you should personalize your connection requests. Think of it as, meeting someone at a dinner party. You want to present why they should be part of your network and why you should be part of their network. So sending blanket connection requests probably doesn't yield the types of results that, you might be looking to yield, Lawrence. Just, side note.
Okay.
Right, especially if you're not well known yourself. So sometimes if you're well known and you drop a connection request on somebody, you can get away without personalizing it. But I think for me, if you just send the default invitation, it's difficult. I have to make an assessment, that sort of thing. That raises some issues. I think especially for females with the unsolicited, like unpersonalized
I haven't had
thing.
a problem with it. Like it's.
But no, that is a real thing. But if you would send me an invitation that says, I loved you on the podcast.
Oh, yeah,
it's 100% guaranteed that I'm going to link to you.
No, I agree with that, and that's oftentimes, after every conference, I pile up cards, and I'll reach out to people via LinkedIn, or I'll send them an email, whatnot, and oftentimes, depending on the settings with LinkedIn, you got to send it to an email, the connection request. But this is just like kind of my like rules of the road. So. When I kind of got onto LinkedIn, the first thing I did was reach out to everybody I know personally, and then that was my first network. And then from there, I kind of connected with like companies I knew, and I follow everybody. I'm not a LinkedIn snob, and so I do connection requests. Like I'm just gonna use Clio because they're sponsors of the network. I'll reach out to everybody on Clio because they work there, and we know people that know each other, and so I reach from there. And it's amazing just how that spiders out into other connections, and then so that's kind of one of the things I do. Once I know one person, then I suddenly know 5.
Yeah, you can build out an organization that you're interested in, and then sort of leverage those connections. So if you're outside counsel and you know the general counsel, and you're able to connect because they're active on LinkedIn, I guarantee it becomes really easy for when you reach out to the rest of the people in the law department there, you're going to get a high rate of return on the connections that you have. And that can be a good thing, because I think that sometimes lawyers say, I want to use LinkedIn to build business, and how can I reach out to people who are potential customers? We've always felt that LinkedIn is great for building out your referral network. So you want to be connected to these people. You can say, oh, I know someone here, or I can ask this person who they know there. Or like I'm working on something and I need to talk to a lawyer at Microsoft. Well, here's a friend of mine who's connected to somebody there. I can use that person as the go-between.
So my next question is based on cache of expertise. So obviously, legal lawyers like to write. And so I think one of the things that sets lawyers apart, especially in our world, which is a media world, Legal Talk Network, is writing. And so people post articles all the time, or they'll reshare an article all the time. So I want to get to that. What is the best way? This is something my account's not very successful with. I don't do it that often. I need to do it more. I'm trying, but just run out of hours in the day. But I recognize it's very important. So I want to throw that to you guys. What is a good post, and what's the most effective way to reach out to people to share it?
Absolutely. So one of the fundamental questions is, who's reading that post? And I think a data point for the audience here is that over 88% of Fortune 1000 GCs are on LinkedIn. So I'll let you digest that, right? Now,
That's a big number.
It's a big number, right? Now let's talk through the type of content that these GCs are interested in. Your ability to identify industry trends, your ability to identify technology trends, and speak to that from a legal practitioner's perspective, certainly without giving legal advice, really resonates with this kind of group and those group of stakeholders.
And for me, there's sort of two things that you can do. So one is, I think it's called articles, one is updates. So the updates are where you link to something that you find useful to the people, to your network. So it's not original to you, and then you can do likes and you do comments, and you can do that in a way that you do in other social media. But you have like a much better audience, a higher quality audience for that, and that can be really interesting. And to that network, you're just giving value. So you're not taking, you're a giver. The articles thing is really interesting because you can take either repurpose content or do original articles, put them in there, they live for a while, and Chuki, I think for me the great thing is that you get these great analytics on those articles, and that can be really helpful.
Yeah, and some of those analytics would include, who from XYZ industry is actually checking out your profile, or you had 4 viewers of your profile from ABC company. It becomes really powerful, and in many ways, it informs your outreach strategy. And then something else to call out too is the ability to really take content that's already on your law firm website or your company website and just reshare that content on LinkedIn. It takes absolutely no effort, just a matter of a couple of clicks, and in many ways, that content lives forever on the platform. It becomes an inbound channel for you for marketing purposes, for client engagement purposes.
And you can also do some testing. So you can say, we'll put out this article and you think it's going to get a lot of engagement, or if it doesn't, you say, I just put out this checklist. So there's a lot of lawyers that found that, to their surprise, like a simple checklist will get the most traffic from the earliest days of web pages. So you could say, I notice when I do this thing or this type of headline or this type of content, I get great analytics or get great results. But when I do something that I think is cool, it's like a dud. And so you get some feedback, so that can be really helpful.
So priming the pump is going to be the title of my next question here. And so I learned this from David Latt from Above the Law. I was actually at a Clio Cloud conference, and he was talking about the ways that he built up his Twitter platform. And I think it's a very similar strategy in LinkedIn. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. So I do make a point, about once a week, no matter how busy I am, I try to do 20 or 30 minutes. It's usually kind of off hours time. Like I said, sitting in bed, better than counting sheep tennis. I try to share other people's contributions to the space. And I do that. When I do that, my one rule that I don't break is I read the article. Some of those are long articles, so I may have to skim a little bit. I cheat a little bit, but not too much. I make sure that at least I've seen it, but I want to see it, and then I try to make a comment. And I think that's meaningful, and I try to do that as honestly as I can. And it doesn't take a lot. I've noticed there's a lot of return on that, and eventually, those same people come back and share your updates and your posts and things like that. So I just wanted to leave that as an open-ended question to you guys.
No, I think the way your approach is perfect because when on the updates and the articles, I think of this, if I like something that's like, I acknowledge this, I want to people to know about this, I like this person, that sort of thing. But it doesn't necessarily mean I read the article. But if I read the article...
Dennis Kennedy, you don't read the article?
I skim it, right? Sometimes you do, sometimes you just trust people that they're doing good stuff.
So wait, Dennis Kennedy, are you on the record right now telling me you don't read LinkedIn for the articles?
Interesting question. I see where you're going with it, and I'm going to change the subject. So, but no, I think that when you comment, there is an expectation that you read, unless you sort of say, like, great job or something like that. You sort of expect that somebody has read it. Or I might comment and go like, my friend, blah, 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 always writes great things, and you signal to people. But so there is this thing, lawyers tend to overdo it on social media, go like, if a retweet is not an endorsement, a like is not an endorsement. And you're like, no, it's just you're just saying,
I don't want to get fried by the trolls.
It's just an acknowledgement. It's like, I'm just saying this is interesting. I might disagree with everything in the article, but this is interesting and it's worth considering.
Absolutely.
So,
and one of the powerful things that you can do without specifically endorsing the article, or let's say you haven't read the article, is to ask a question in the comment section. Just pose a question. by posing a question in many ways, it actually, and we've done research on this from a LinkedIn perspective, it does elevate the eyeballs on your comment. People are interested to see why a Dennis Kennedy would ask this question, much more than Dennis saying, great article.
That's a good point.
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and you never know what to expect. I mean, I think that I've learned that putting a picture into an article or doing a picture in an update is generally gives you a higher return. Like I did this thing on LinkedIn recently where the new book came out, and I just took a picture of the box of the books that were sent to me, and I posted it on LinkedIn, and I said, just that moment when you feel like the book is actually done.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, that was good.
I did like that.
And that's all I said.
Yeah.
You know, not like, hey, buy my book or anything like that. Because I was just so grateful the book was finally done. And when last I checked, like the response to that is amazing. And so it's like over 4,500 views and 200 likes and about 25 comments. And all I did was just posted a photo of the box of books arriving. But people asked me how to get it. People said they'd like to review it, and it's just kind of an interesting result. Being on LinkedIn so long, I always say I'm running science experiments, but which may be a good transition for Chuki, because there are some. When you go to the premium accounts, there's actually some of the things I've been doing as experiments that are now built-in tools.
Absolutely. So a couple of things, right? On the premium side, and Dennis, you and I, we talked about this earlier, the ability to send more messages when you don't have contact information. Right, so Lawrence, think of some of the use cases that you call out, like you've identified a company that you want to build out a better relationship with, just one person at that company, and you're not connected to some of the other individuals that you want to be connected to. You can actually send them a message using a premium subscription.
Oh, wow, okay.
So
Yeah,
that's
I'm just
one
using the
powerful way.
free. So the premium, I mean, if you're in business and your business is contacts and developing contacts, you really need to be doing the premium version. So I am such a complete idiot when it comes to the premium version of LinkedIn. How much is it, by the way?
There's several.
There are
There's several different levels of premium?
There's several different levels. One of the things that
Is
I
there
would
one that'll make me a sandwich?
not when you're sitting by the bedside. I mean,
Right.
Wait, this is recorded about lunchtime, right?
Yeah, we're getting hungry. So,
Yeah.
but tell me about the different tiers of
Absolutely.
premium.
So fundamentally, it's best to think of LinkedIn as having 4 different business units. You have the sales solutions business, the talent solutions business, the marketing solutions business, and then the learning solutions business. When you think of LinkedIn for business development, it's best to think of it from a sales and marketing perspective. So within those 2 divisions, there are a number of subscriptions that you can get that are individual level subscriptions, also company-wide or firm-wide level subscriptions. And I would highly recommend taking a look first at some of the free trials. So Lawrence, your audience can actually get free trials of a number of these subscriptions. To Dennis's point, to run that science experiment and see what would be best for you. And some of those free trials are about 30 days.
Yeah, so the inexpensive one that I have, there's a couple things that I find really useful. Like if somebody views your profile, you can see all the people who view it. And that's another strategy for you. So if somebody views your profile, if you hit them with a connection request, assuming they're interested in them, that your conversion is going to be very high on that. So it's another way to engage, and especially if you're trying to build. So sometimes, and I've written about this before, but if you're looking for a new job or you maybe move to a new city or something, you may have the need to add a lot of targeted connections really quickly. And that's where the things like the LinkedIn recommendations suggest who you would like, or doing strategic things of building out, like doing a geographic search and say, I want to find people in those areas. And there's a premium account that gets really granular on that. So for certain campaigns, you would want to do that.
Yeah, a couple of the value propositions with premium is you get expanded network access. So it's going beyond your personal first-degree connections. You can actually see into your second, third, and beyond in degree of connections. So Dennis, the use case that you called out, you have an opportunity in Dallas, you don't have any connections in Dallas. You can actually, with a premium subscription, run a couple of searches and get access to all the key contacts in Dallas that you want to engage with. So you get that expanded network access. You also get expanded messaging. As Lawrence, you and I talked about, the ability to message someone without having an email address becomes really powerful.
Well, we are way out of time. I let this one run into overtime because I love LinkedIn.
Because you can't stop talking about LinkedIn. You've been
I
talking to
love
me
it.
the whole show about it.
Yes, I know. So I just want to have one more question for you guys. I mean, obviously there's going to be some follow-ups. There's so much to this, and a great digital engagement strategy, whether you're a law firm or a media company or whatever, getting the word out there. So contact information, I want to leave that with the listeners. Let's start with Dennis Kennedy.
So I'm Dennis Kennedy. I'm easy to find because I'm co-host of the Kennedy Mile Report on the Legal Talk Network. So you can always find me there. I'm at DennisKennedy.com and have been since, I don't know, probably for 20 years or so.
Well, let's hit that book one more time because I think whether you're an attorney, a barista, or a rogue federal agent, you should be reading Dennis's book.
So Allison Shields and I wrote the book. It's called LinkedIn in 1 Hour for Lawyers. And if you want people to speak on LinkedIn, Allison is totally amazing. And she typically has more availability than I do. And I can guarantee anybody listening to this podcast knows that Chuki would be a great person to come in and talk to you about LinkedIn.
Well, let's close it out with Chuki then.
Thank you. Yeah, Chuki Obio. You can find me, lo and behold, on LinkedIn. Yes. In addition to that, I want to let you know that I am the hardest working man for you. What does that mean? That means any question is fair game. To Lawrence's point, feel free to follow up. I can answer questions as a postscript, and I'm happy to help in any way that you deem necessary. Thank you.
Well, we've reached the end of the road for today's episode, but I want to thank our guests for joining us and our listeners for tuning in. And if you like what you heard today, please find us and rate us in Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time for another episode of On the Road with Legal Talk Network.
If you'd like more information about what you've heard today, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. Subscribe via iTunes and RSS. Find us on Twitter and Facebook, or download our free Legal Talk Network app in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.